Morning, everyone. I'm super excited to welcome Cliff Simon. Cliff, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
We have a common friend, Kyle Edmund Hayes, and that's how we got connected. And he speaks very highly of you about your expertise in RevOps. So we'll definitely talk RevOps. But before we get going, it'll be amazing if you'd please take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself.
Yeah, happy to. My name is Cliff Simon. I'm the CEO and founder of Polaris Ops. We are an AI-focused RevOps agency helping companies navigate the difficult waters of build versus buy. My background has been about 2 decades now in go-to-market. I started my career at a Fortune 20 company and found myself going earlier and earlier in order to get access to more strategic thought, responsibility, and ownership of the overall go-to-market process. I've really enjoyed the early stages of companies. So come in and done 0 to 10, a 0 to 15, most recently a 0 to 8 in 20 months, bootstrapped with Carabiner Group, and then led that to an acquisition, oh my gosh, just over 2 years ago to a company called SBI Growth. And then, yeah, it's been a fun journey, man. Just doing all these different things. I've also had the great fortune of being a fractional CRO. So done that at 175 million, 35 million. I've run RevOps for a couple different organizations, Series E and above, and a fractional component. And then I've also run a solutions consulting team globally for another client. So yeah, good to
That's amazing. That is a lot. So let's go start with the name. What's in the name Polaris?
Yeah, I was in between two names. I was meeting with a private equity friend of mine, and other option was Black Hawk Ops. And this happened literally the day that the US dropped the bunker busters on Iran.
Okay.
And they're like, yeah, maybe nothing with the military theme. I was like, okay, okay. And Polaris was the other option that I was looking at. I think there's a lot of noise in the market today. It's something I constantly hear from my friends who are either operating partners or value creation folks or CROs, CEOs, founders. There's a lot of noise, and it's hard to differentiate what's real from what's just really good marketing. And our goal at Polaris is to always be able to be that guiding light, that North Star.
Yeah, when I think about Polaris, United Business Class coming to mind.
Yeah,
And so I was thinking,
I'm a 1K, so yeah, I think about that a lot too.
yeah, so I'm thinking maybe you're trying to bring calm and coolness to a land of chaos that goes on when it comes to RevOps, but
Ooh, I
it's
love that.
so. Tell me a little bit about your journey. Like I know at a macro level, you talked about pick some cases, battle wounds and successes. Let's kind of go through that a little bit.
I mean, I've had plenty of successes and plenty of failures along the way, right? I think you learn, like most people do, better from the failures than you do the successes. With Carabiner, we probably almost broke the company like 4 or 5 times with the rapid pace of growth and always trying to figure out what was the right next piece. How do we think about headcount? How do we think about the way that we're defining and executing on go-to-market? How does the ICP shift and change? How do we adjust the positioning and messaging? So I've had great successes in a lot of those areas, but some significant failures too, where just like any other person that's been in the sales seat, I've been pipped before. I've made President's Club before. I've been let go before. So nothing too unusual.
So through that journey, somebody told me on the podcast, and I kind of found that statement fascinating. He said, when RevOps is working, the company's possibly not growing. When RevOps is breaking because the company is pushing the edge and everything is breaking, and your job to see that sort of, that those hurdles are coming and make sure that nobody sees it, but you know it. So talk to me a little bit about this growth experience when you went through. Like, what were the major takeaways when you sort of hit these bottlenecks on not just capacity, just system architecture, platforms, more tools come in. You try to kind of walk us through maybe one or two examples.
I think the thing that we did really well internally was the fact that we started everything from day zero with the end output in mind. And when I say end output, like we knew that we wanted to get acquired. And we knew that the most likely scenario for that would either be a private equity backed company in a strategic kind of fashion, which is exactly where we went to. But because of that, we put all the systems in place from day one, all the KPIs in place from day one, so that we could track everything that we would need in order to be able to tell that story and to be able to have all the right data to be able to model it and show it in an accurate fashion. And I think that's something that a lot of folks don't necessarily think about early on. They're not thinking about conversion rates. They're not thinking about how they're tracking that against multiple product types, how they're thinking about the way that they're tracking that against specific ICP. One of the things that we love to track was average revenue per contact, right? Or like, you would typically think about it like an LTV. We're thinking about that LTV, but not at a company level, at a contact level, because champion tracking is a huge thing. We've seen all these companies come up around it. I want to be able to understand what that person is worth to me, right? Not just what that company is worth to me.
So I'm going to dial back a little bit. Maybe I'm jumping too quickly in the nuts
Yeah,
and
it's all
bolts.
good.
Let me kind of step back. You have gone through various sizes of growth, right? And different
Mhm.
velocities. Let's kind of step back, maybe a 10 million and a 50 million, kind of 100 million markers. And can you kind of walk us through what does RevOps means in those kind of phases? And what are the tools and processes and maybe a little bit even people side you have seen in those three markers?
Yeah, so at 10 million, you're typically looking at a very small team, maybe 2 or 3 folks max, depending on what you've raised already. Typically, the mandate there is to make sure that you're putting in systems that are going to be durable for the next 3 years. How do you think about that growth? Really difficult now with AI, right? What is the right tool? How do you evaluate that appropriately? What is the right skill set as you continue to grow the team? And how do you make sure that you're ready for that next big stage of growth? Because when you're at 10, you're typically getting ready for a B round. Maybe you've gotten there a little bit earlier and you're looking at an A. If you had you're a hyperscaler or something, right? Or one of these new hyper growth companies. But you're typically trying to figure out what other things do I need to be doing? And you're doing a lot of triage to say, these are the 10 things that we're going to do this year. And these are the other 20 that we're going to leave until we get to that next milestone, right?
Yeah.
At 50, you're already past Series C, right? You're trying to figure out where you're going to be. Either are you going to continue to evolve from a product perspective? Are you going to start being acquisitive? Are you building brand new products? I think there's a lot more questions there around NRR, GRR. What is your cross-sell opportunity? How do you start thinking about that and going out and creating additional channels, right? In the earlier days, in that 10 million phase, you're probably driving a lot via word of mouth. You're driving a lot via direct. When you get to 50 and you really want to keep growing, you have to put a lot more effort into channel, into partnerships. So it becomes another go-to-market motion that takes a lot more energy, time, consistency.
So we'll absolutely, come to the channel part of things. Things get more complex, and I know you and Kyle have been working on multiple stuff. But talk to us a little bit about the systems, like at 10 and $50 million points. Like, what are typical that you have seen? And I realize it completely varies between the velocity of the product, the kind of solutions you're selling, the complexity layer with its SMB, mid-market, enterprise. The stack looks different, but maybe you can pick an example, kind of walk us through in both of those sizes.
I think that's actually something that's radically changed over the last 12 months, where if you're a $10 million company today, you're probably trying to build as agentically as possible, right? How do I drive this from an AI native perspective? I need a CRM. I need some type of conversational intelligence tool. I need Claude, and I need some type of ERP, right? Maybe I need a marketing automation platform. Maybe I don't. I might be able to stitch some of that together with Claude and with some of the additional products that exist in the market today. But that world has shifted, right? You don't need to go out and buy all the data, all the signals, right? You need to get the things that actually matter for your ICP. I think a lot of people get really caught up in the fact like, oh, my TAM is 150,000 companies out there and I want to be able to sell to all of them. No, don't do that. Like, you don't even have the capacity to sell to that many people. How do you boil that ocean down to the 200 companies that you should be talking to this year that you have the best chance of selling to because the product market fit is there, the signals in the market are there? Focus on that. Get their data, understand their signals, understand their problems and their specific needs. That's what's going to be your anchor to success, right? People forget to think about an actual user story and a persona story, and like focus on that. Get your positioning and messaging type for that. That's what you need to do at 10 million. That changes as you go up the market, and once you get to 50, once you get to 100, but at 10, be really focused and learn to say no to a lot.
So I'm going to kind of stay here a little bit before maybe we get to 50. Part of our business in ZINFI, we predominantly deal with enterprise, 1,000 employees in our, and most of them, we have 30 plus Fortune 100 companies. It's a very different space. But we have started an initiative, as I was mentioning to you, here in the Bay Area with founders, where we're focusing on sort of $1 to $10 million range, and
Yeah.
really work with them, bring an ecosystem together. So this is a question more from their behalf. And I loved one of the posts you had where you talked about that most people are scaling with AI as if they're hiring more headcounts. Instead of headcounts, they're buying more tools. And because the founder ecosystem I'm part of, they're all tech people, right? They love
hmm
tools. So I'm seeing them stitching together, bunch of stuff and spending, hours till 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning trying to make a sense of it. So talk to us a little bit, like what does a $10 million stack look like from, you said, build it the new way, the agentic way, right? What is in that stack?
Yeah. So if I'm doing it, it's some type of VPS, right? Using an N8N. I'm not a huge internal user of Clay. Our team's used it in the past, but we've really switched off of it since December, January. Right? We used to use it for scaffolding, and that's about it. We're using Claude Code. We're In our case, we're a Salesforce shop, right? But we also have HubSpot for our map. So things are firing from one to the other. We have a scheduling software. We internally use Gong, but like you could realistically use any conversational intelligence tool, have it tied back to an MCP, make sure you have your markdown files that it's accessing, right? Right. That's the front end. And then you're using those agents to go out and use your markdown files to go out and build your ICP to go find the right people to you're telling and helping it understand what the right signals are. I think you can really replace $500,000 in tech spend on that front half of client acquisition with agentic tools that might run you 25,000, $50,000 instead. Right. And then you have to pay somebody to run it. But you're also probably replacing BDRs if you're that early, right? You don't need them.
Let's stay here, 1 to 10 million kind of dollar space. We're putting a stack together. Let's start all the way from awareness, reach and awareness, right? Then traffic, like landing, and then conversion, right? And then sort of pre-funnel, in-funnel, and maybe post-funnel. Let's go through the whole sort of rev up cycle. Can you
Sure.
walk us through use cases, stack, some examples, like what you're seeing is working?
Yeah. So on the front end, right, I think you need to do the hard work of understanding who your ICP is, defining that ICP well, getting a handle of that, and getting an understanding of the, let's call it five main personas within those businesses that are going to buy from you and the reasons they're going to do it. And you start putting together all the positioning and messaging around that. You feed that into Claude. Now, Claude's going to go out and find all of those components, right? As far as the signals, you also need to go get a data set that's going to do that. For us, we use a mixture of Aviato and Graph IQ. Lead Magic is another great one. Super cost effective for of tech that are out there versus going out and paying for the really big license from the publicly traded versions. So we take a look at that data, mince it together. You get the contact information. You start doing your outreach, right? You can have the agents write the outreach. You can have a human in the loop that verifies it before it gets sent out. I love Swan AI. We're using that too. It's a go-to-market engineer in a box. Think of it as like a cursor for go-to-market people. So connects all my different systems. We have access to the Zapier MCP. That's tying a different bunch of components together in the back end and allowing everything to talk. We've also trained up an entire cloud model on HubSpot and HubSpot's MCP. So now it's if I was early, I'd be on HubSpot. I'd push all that data in there. You can build out territory mapping, lead routing, all of it, right? You can then have that MCP connector push over to do automations into Slack. So now I'm getting all these alerts of every new account, every new person I should be reaching out to because we've built all these custom signals based on all the reasons people buy from us, right? Your front end.
So
And
let's see
yeah,
there. We'll come sort of in funnel, but in the front end, you said reach out. What does reach out look? I mean, nobody picks up calls anymore. What does reach out
I
mean
would
to you?
disagree. I would
Well,
disagree. I think people pick up calls a lot. Depends on who you're selling to. Customers that sell into legacy businesses, manufacturing, you know, insurance, hardware, right? Places where people talk on the phone. They don't do a ton via email. Those
so you
people
think
pick up
it's
the
more
phone.
of an IT bubble issue that where people don't pick up phone and screen
Oh,
on.
100%.
I see.
100%.
That's a great insight. So out. Let's stay on the front end stack a little bit. You mentioned a bunch of tools together. What is like from a site perspective, content optimization perspective? You mentioned Claude a couple of times. Can you kind of walk through the use cases, like how you're using LLMs?
I wouldn't say we're doing it from like a site perspective or like doing any type of conversion rate optimization or anything from the website like specifically. I think that's stuff that you have to continue to look at. And yeah, you're going to want to show up in the LLMs if you're trying to drive AEO, GEO. Noble is a great tool for that. That's noble.com.
What's your take on Profound? Have you worked with Profound? They're right in the New York City area.
I haven't worked with Profound, but Noble is what Profound is using for everything offsite. Just announced a partnership this past week, and I am an advisor and equity holder at Noble, so big fan. But to answer your question, we're going out and building those custom signals, doing custom data scraping with a couple of different tools. The way that we're actually managing the tech and the API consumption, the token consumption is mostly through OpenRouter. And then we're using Supabase to do our repos. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can make it work.
So let's most of the people hanging out here are they're engineers.
Yeah.
They're building stack, and this is for the first time I think in their career they can go into marketing area being an engineer. So break down the word signal a little bit and imagine a product being sold in mid-market and enterprise anywhere between 30 to 50K on the mid-market and maybe 100 to 200K ACV on the enterprise. Sure. What is a signal in your mind?
Signal in my mind is an indicator that someone is in a buying motion or about to be in a buying motion, right? Statistically speaking, 3 to 5% of your potential customer pool is in a buying motion for your specific type of product in any given quarter. The question is, can you drive enough brand awareness and understanding that you have the ability to solve for that need before they are in a position to start buying for that need? Signals might be things like people who've bought from you in the past go to a new job, champion tracking, right? Signals might be that they are hiring for more people that are going to be end users of your tool. Is there somebody new in seat that's not a champion of yours, but you know that this is their typical mandate? One of our customers does APAR software. They go out and scrape the web to go see if their potential customers are using any type of APAR software anywhere on their websites. Is there a payment link anywhere, right? So all of these different components are different signals that make sense. One that we've built that I think is really interesting is a succession planning signal, right? So is there a boomer parent in the business with a Gen X or geriatric millennial in an operations or finance role, right? Like where in the very near future, that boomer is probably going to want to retire. Have they done all the things necessary in the business in order to help drive that forward? Now we can take that with these other signals and combine it together and say, oh, most likely not. Let's have a different conversation. We're not coming in and saying, hey, you should use this tool. It's, hey, you've got someone that's been running this business a certain way for the last 20, 30 years. They're going to be leaving. That's a lot of institutional knowledge leaving. That's a lot of process leaving. Have you thought about what it looks like when that changes? And have you put a plan together for that? Let's talk about that, right? It's human to human. It's not trying to like sell you something. It's actually solving a problem.
So let's say you're halfway through in that $1 to $10 million journey, you're at 5 million, right? And you have installed bases of customer.
Yeah.
So is there a way I can analyze my customer base to build a pattern that I can use to build signal tracking? Like, what is that process?
Yeah. So you need to take a look at all of your existing data set, right? Your ACVs, time to close, all the conversions across the funnel. You want to look at your existing customer base. How many years have they been with you? What's the ACV? What's the upsell? Ingest all that information, figure out who your best ones are. And then you want to go out and tell Claude to go find lookalikes.
Walk me through Claude to look at. Like, I mean, do I connect the Apollo and ZoomInfo through Claude and pull that? Like, how does Claude look for that?
Well, yeah, you have to feed it account information, right? So you can get it from any of the sources I mentioned, or an Apollo, a ZoomInfo, a Cognizant, a Lucia. I mean, there's a ton of data providers out there. Pick your poison. Ideally, pick the one that's not going to cost you the most, right? Because again, you're not trying to boil the entire ocean down. You're trying to boil down the ocean with a specific NAX code or a specific SIC code or a specific whatever, a certain geography, right? But yeah, then you're asking it to go find the things that look like that. And you're going to use firmographic information, employee count, region, industry. I'm going to use technographic information. I'm going to use persona data and mix all of that together. Now we should get a good understanding of who our customer should be. If you want to do that yourself, you can. If you want to go buy a solution that does that, Rev Intelligence is a great solution. So there's all kinds of ways to build and buy and mix and match within this process.
So a couple of years ago, right, the kind of stack on the journey went through. Most of these tools were there. Some of them were not, like Profund and etc. I guess Profund was still there a couple of years ago. But when you're pulling this together, there was a lot of human hand holding, right? Because you're looking up data, dashboard in one side, uploading, downloading, into
Yeah.
another side, mixing and matching. You mentioned N8N. Make is a customer of ours, similar platform and
Mhm.
capabilities in a different ways. But when you think about orchestration platforms, how much of those platforms are ready today to replace sort of the human in the loop, and how much human in the loop is very much required?
I think human in the loop is 100% required. I don't think you get away from it, right? This is not about having the AI go do something for you. It's about the AI getting components ready so that you can verify and push it forward to the next stage, right? It would take a team of business analysts days, if not weeks, to sift through all of this, right? We don't need to do that anymore. We can have the AI run it, and then we can go back and check and verify. Okay? If you're a $5 million company, what, you maybe have three, maybe four salespeople. If you're talking about, the mid-market, what are they working? 75 accounts a year that they're going to try to like work through and try to close? Maybe 150 if you're really pushing it. So like in reality, you don't need that much. What you need is enough of the right mix.
So speaking of mix, I want to go back to one of the metrics, and I've heard this ratio like kind of all over. Like when you're scaling, million to 10, your tech stack to people stack ratio in the RevOps space need to be 1 to 1, 5 to 1, 10 to 1, depending on how fast you're growing, what product you're selling, what velocities are, and maturity of the tool stack, and etc. You made a statement in the beginning. You said you can replace $500,000 tech stack with $25,000 of agentic stack. So, what is that tool to people ratio in today's world, do you think, that you're seeing that's realistic in that $1 to $10 million space?
Oh man, it's all over. I really think it depends on your motion, right? You can be much higher on the tech side and keep your human capital costs lower if you're PLG, right? We're in a time and place now where like a really awesome PLG motion can be run by the RevOps team and you don't need a seller in there almost at all. So you can now turn something that used to be a cost center into a revenue generating function, which is wild for someone just doing clicks and configuration, right? But they are that connecting point between the organization. If you're talking about like a traditional mid-market to enterprise motion, the tech stack cost used to run somewhere between, I want to say it was somewhere between like 12 to 20K per seller annum, but that's shifted too, right? People have gotten away from seat based. We're going to usage based. Some people are even going to value based pricing. So I think it's hard to necessarily say, but the other thing we didn't talk about was as you're replacing that roughly 500,000 in tech costs with a $25,000 tech cost, you're also replacing human capital cost, right? You can probably rip out your 2 to 4 BDRs and or repurpose them. Maybe some of them are better suited to a CSM role where we need more high touch. And what you really need is really good full cycle reps, and you need an additional headcount or two to be able to actually run the systems that you've built. I think that's the more challenging part. We've got Clay to thank for this rise of the go-to-market engineer title. But what I've noticed is that the majority of the folks that are GTMEs are just really glorified growth hackers that are a bit more technical, and they typically lack the ability to tie back the business requirements and the business value to the things that they're building.
So I want to go to that other point that you kind of mentioned, this sort of AI scaling trap. Like when you're trying to scale, you get trapped in the tools versus thinking beyond the tools. So can you kind of double click a little bit on that? I still want to kind of stay pre-funnel, in-funnel kind of a state. Like what are the gotchas that people you think need to look out for if they're trying to implement an AI infrastructure?
Again, the biggest one is making sure that they actually have everything defined. People are just throwing things at the wall and hoping something sticks. You're not going to have results if that's what you're trying to do. Re-ask the question. Sorry. My brain's like firing on 7 cylinders.
I actually took a different thread, so we'll cut this part out. So let me go back to where we're going. Let's stay on metrics. I'll go back to metrics because
Okay.
you're talking about seat-based pricing, different pricing, etc. Right? So, Cliff, you talked about a lot of the pricing things are changing from the tool consumption or pricing perspective, investment perspective. I want to kind of flip that around from a revenue perspective because if how people are selling tools are different, that means how people are buying it's different. So, what are you seeing the traditional RevOps KPIs that used to be tied to seat-based operation? Because RevOps, of course, is all KPI driven. So what are you seeing KPI changes in the front end that were not there maybe 12 or 18 months ago?
Well, no one cares about MQLs anymore, right? It's all about qualified pipe. I think that's a fairly significant shift that should have happened a lot faster than it did. The other things I think that are
Before you move, that's a big statement. So can you just double click, just stay there for a minute or two?
sure. The problem with the MQL is that it is a metric that is derived from the wrong incentive. Marketing can't win if sales isn't winning, right? Because they're two sides of the same coin. Either your client acquisition model and your client retention model via customer marketing, that drives upsell, cross sell, all that, right? Um, Either those things are working in concert with one another, or the entire thing's broken. You can't have marketing going out and creating a ton of leads that don't convert. Okay? It's much better and more practical to understand your ICP and, again, focus on a small set, focus on the right persona, say no to a lot of things to go after the things that actually work. Now, there's a bunch of different ways to slice that, but what matters is driving qualified pipeline that converts into the funnel, that increases sales velocity, right? We want to close things faster because we're talking to the right people who already know about the problem. And we want those people to be people that are going to buy from us and they're going to renew and they're going to consume more of the product over time because it's actually providing value, right? All of that's a feedback loop. What marketing is doing from a positioning and messaging perspective to what sales is promising when they're offering up all this amazing value to the impact that the customer actually receives once they've gone through onboarding and been implemented, like all of that has to work together. And the incentivization of an MQL metric is like an antithetical thought to that. If I'm marketing, I care about the pipeline that we're generating that actually closes. If I'm sales, I care about the deals that we close that actually renew.
So going back to, you used the word signal in the beginning. Let's come to another word here called attribution. So what are the attributions you think are different now than they used to be tied to MQL?
Where attributions matter now, it's not about giving sales credit or marketing credit or the BDR credit versus the AE. I think that's phooey, right? What matters is understanding that we as folks in go to market are stewards of capital. I'm putting a bet on events. I'm putting a bet on community. I'm putting a bet on partnerships. I'm putting a bet on inbound. I'm putting a bet on outbound. I'm putting a bet on an ecosystem play, right? I need to know what the return on that bet is. And that's something that I need to be monitoring on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis to be able to reallocate my resourcing. If I'm seeing a really great return from events, maybe we drive more events. If I'm seeing an awesome return by spending money on a tool that's helping me drive AEO, and I can start pulling back spend from Google Ads and from keyword search and from some specific LinkedIn ad spend, like those are all things that we need to be tinkering with because it's about putting our product and brand in front of the eyeballs of the people who are most likely to buy. It's not about saying, oh, I spent $10,000 on this and it didn't work, right? We don't want to be pouring money down the drain. I had a customer that was spending $1 million on ads and they're like getting no return. But what was actually working was they're doing a bunch of out of home stuff that they weren't putting any real money into. They dialed that up to a 2, turned the ad spend down to 0, and their pipeline increased dramatically. Like it's common sense stuff, but you have to be paying attention and actually looking at it to know.
So let's move into pipeline, looking at the time, and I got to have you back now that I've sort of started to understand what's in brain, and we need definitely a follow-up session. So, okay, we got truly qualified in funnel ICP.
Yeah.
What does RevOps look like in funnel discovery and beyond that sales says, yeah, it's an opportunity, work in it. What happens then? Because traditionally not much happened then, right?
I
Other than
mean,
just tracking in, I mean, other than tracking in CRM, not much happened. But now there's the other
everything,
tools that are a lot of tools. Yeah. So
everything
talk.
happens from then, right? It's like, who else is involved in the process, right? You start running your medpick, medic, spice, band, challenger, whatever, right? But you're looking at the data. You have to understand why people are buying. You have to understand who else they're looking at. You have to understand the value proposition. You have to understand and bring back, a CFO approved business case, right? Like you have to put all of these things out there, and then you have to go enable your buyer because, oh, the time you get to spend with them is like maybe 2% of what they think about on any given day. Right. So, how do you make sure that they can take that messaging forward? Because you're probably never going to be in the final room where the decision's made. You're never going to talk to that decision maker.
Let me rephrase the question a little bit. What I meant that is, of course, everything happens from a sales
Yeah, yeah,
perspective.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
been very humanly driven. It's been rep driven, right? And there was a
Yeah.
lot of rep variability. There were not a lot of tech stack other than Gong, tools like Gong and etc. that would plug in and they will work with. And maybe you'll do data enrichment on certain accounts. Maybe you'll try to multi-thread. The obvious thing that last 10 years sort of people kind of talked about people need to do. What I actually was trying to ask is that what is changing in funnel tech stack wise that makes the seller a super rep versus just another rep?
Just like of the best athletes out there, right? The reps that do the best are the ones that have a process. They stick to it. They understand when they can break it and what they need to do to move things forward. Uh, I think what's been changing over the last few years now is we have technology that can take the best things that the best of the reps do and make sure that becomes a standardized process across the rest of the team, right? We have A plus players. That's awesome. We need to turn the Bs into As, the Cs into Bs, and figure out what to do with the Ds, right? Um, the things that we have now, yeah, I mean, call prep, so much easier. My reps should not be spending hours and hours doing research. They have tools, agentic tools that can do that for them, right? A lot of that should be prepped for them even ahead of time, before they're even getting on the very first call, before they've booked a meeting. We have agentic tools that help them understand what questions they should be asking, that give them coaching right after the call. Shoot, there's even stuff that will coach them while they're on the call, right? We have tech now that can help coach them on having those difficult negotiating conversations, right? Or any of it. It's role play, right? It's practice.
So, you made a statement, and I picked up in one of the posts. It said, context is a competitive mode,
Yeah.
especially when you're selling in a highly competitive environment, right? So,
Yep.
define the context that tech can create that wasn't possible before or very labor consuming for a rep to go do. Well, how can we create a context for a rep using an agentic framework that is very real, within budget and kind of blows everything out?
Yeah. I mean, how long did it take you to reach the last 10K that you looked at, right? I don't want to sit through all of that. It was a pain in the butt when I was selling enterprise. You know, Now I've got a tool that can go out and read everything in the entire world on this company, give me feedback, help me understand what really matters to the CEO, to the board, right? We can get all this information at our fingertips. The challenge, I think, is no longer getting the data, it's making sure that our reps are looking at the data that's relevant to them, because the amount of pages that I need to look at on a daily basis now in order to get context of what my team is doing is mind numbing. I have friends who are CROs at companies, 50 to 250 million. They're like, I have to read like 200, 300 pages a day just to keep up with all the context. He's like, I maybe make it through a tenth of that with everything else I have to do. So I think the biggest challenge is actually going to be taking all of those things and distilling it down into a way that's really accessible at the manager and the senior management level. For the reps themselves, it's not going to be overkill. But yeah, you have all these tools now that you can look at it, you can read it, you can get the context. It can tell you what questions you should be asking. It can be thought provoking in that way. Matt, what's going to be the differentiator is how you can deliver it, because ultimately, product's not even going to be a moat.
So I want to stay on this information overload. A couple of decades ago when I went for computer science, management information systems were a big thing. And they still are. And the biggest output at MIS were dashboards, right? I mean, the whole goal was to create this ultimate Uber CEO, CRO, CXO dashboard that they get to drive the business. Never really happened, right? Because when you start integrating tools, data flow issues, integration issues, cleanliness
Sure.
issues. So how much of that is now you think is getting amplified in a bad way, or there's a thing that we can get rid of and make it really real? Because context is also exploding, right? So this CRO that you're talking about, he or she not only has to deal with the legacy dashboard, but now they're getting 40-page account report, graphs, charts, text that never got before, and it's showing up almost every region, every rep territory, etc. It's like, how are they dealing with that information system?
Yeah, now you've got a Slack notification with that much text or that many attachments for every single deal that your team's working on, right? How the heck do you keep up with all of that? Yeah, it's fairly brutal. I don't know if there's a good answer to that.
So you think we're just middle of that storm? I mean, we'll sort through it just like the way we've always done, but you're seeing
Sure.
it everywhere.
Yeah, I think we'll sort through it. I agree. But yeah, I think we're in the middle of it. And it's going to be a challenge because now you're going to start the next logical step is to feed that into a new agent that can then synthesize all of that and give you a shorter version of all of it. But then how much of the nuance and the things that actually matter get lost in the sauce as you do the compression? So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. And I'm really curious to see what happens.
So I want to come back to your company name, Polaris. We're middle of this incredible change, a lot happening. So when you kind of look forward through your company lens, you're an operator before, you've become a founder. Tell me how you're trying to build your business, knowing all these things that you know, all the skills that you have. How are you building it yourself?
Yeah, so we're building a ton of it agentically, right? And a lot of folks that I trust and know and have the desire to go out and build things well. And for us, it's a very human business in the sense that we sell to people, we work with people, we talk to people. And ultimately, our goal is to make people's lives better, whether that's the executives we work with or the teams that we're supporting. Do that if you're not thinking about that outcome. The tooling here helps for sure. We've built a bunch of different things agentically internally that helps maximize the team. It takes away a lot of the busy work from the way that we used to do it. But I don't think that AI is replacing anyone over here, right? It's just allowing really good operators to stretch their arms, just that much further. And it's allowing them to be more creative too, right? They get to spend more time problem solving and thinking through an issue instead of having to constantly be in triage mode or having to do the paperwork, right? Building the project plan doesn't take nearly as long. Updating the tasks or assigning things out, that's all been automated. And that makes everything so much easier. So we can spend more time communicating both internally and with the client.
So sort of, a decade ago, it was people first, process next, and then, platform last. Do you think that order has changed?
No, I don't think the order has changed. I think the magnitude of the mix, right, has shifted. I think it's always going to be people, process, technology. You have
Yeah.
to understand the ICP and the business motions in order to build out the processes that support it. You have to have well-defined processes in order to memorialize them within technology. The fact is now we can build the processes faster because of tech. We can take a gong call or any type of call recording, feed that through, run it into a process, run it through a framework, and now it can spit a bunch of things out. That's great. Ultimately, though, that still needs to be broken down into a bunch of tables and all the field mapping, and then that has to be understood and uploaded somewhere else, right? So using technology to do that makes it so much faster, but we still need people to be in the loop, verifying it, understanding it, and making sure that it's correct. Because, in many cases, let's take enterprise, right? 80% of it's the same, but that other 20% has a wild swing. So,
So, I had Scott Brinker, who's kind of called the father of MarTech, and he has been tracking the whole MarTech space.
yeah.
In the podcast, he said about 10 years ago when he started, or 11 years ago, there were 500 MarTech companies. And over the years, it has grown to 15,000. But this is the first year the growth is flattening out. And there are more companies exiting than more companies entering. Somewhere of that balance, right? I'm
Mhm.
paraphrasing. Are you seeing on the platform side in the RevOps space, the tools are sort of settling down, or you see a whole bunch of new entrants constantly coming in? What are you seeing?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of consolidation at the top of the market, We're seeing a lot of, let's call them SaaS natives, right? From 2013, 2014, 2015, and maybe into like 2019, getting consolidated down. They raised at really high valuations. There's a lot of stress in the market because of that, and they're trying to figure out their exit path. On the other side, you've got innovators dilemma, right? Where you've got all these upstarts, they're coming in AI native, or so they say, and they're grabbing people's lunch. They're eating up the bottom side of the market because people are more cost averse than ever. And what we didn't touch about earlier before is that there's constantly new entrants. And with AI, people are hesitant to pull the trigger on long-term contracts. All right. So we're seeing experimental recurring revenue, right? Or experimental revenue, whatever the term du jour is. And we're seeing people do a 3-month pilot, a 4-month pilot, a 6-month pilot to try something out. One, because they want to make sure that it works, but two, like they're also keeping their eye, just over the horizon to see, is there something new that's coming that's going to replace this very quickly? Because there are things that we had built and we're using in the fall of last year that we have completely dropped for things that came in January, February, and March.
So, Cliff, as my team shared with you, we prepare for these podcasts. I prepared, and I feel so unprepared because you know so much that I need to dig in. What I'd love to do, have you come back, and I'll work with you offline, really kind of drill down to 3, maybe revenue points. We'll pick sort of product segments, and then I'm sure you have tons of slides and whatnot. I'd
Yeah,
like to have
I think what would be helpful if you want to check out the AI report that we did. It's on the Polaris website. Feel free to grab it. Like I said, we looked at like 42 different solutions to see what was out there. By the time we were putting that out to print, we wanted that list to be 100, but there's just so much out there. And the way we think about the world, we're typically talking about it in terms of systems of record, systems of information, and systems of action. And at the center of that, some type of MCP layer. And the funny thing is, like, everyone's running towards MCP. I fear MCP is going to be replaced within the next 6 months by the folks that are on the bleeding edge of the chasm with CLI. So it's like the pace of change is incredible. And I feel like I can't keep up. And I spend half my day talking to new tech.
No, that's what I said. I want to get you back because I think you can help so many founders in the Bay Area and everywhere else, especially in that 1 to 10 range, because there you can control, make changes, switch things out, keep on improving, which is almost
Yeah.
impossible to do in a $1 billion or $10 billion company. So
Gosh, yeah, we
thank
haven't
you
even
for
talked about the AI CRMs yet. So
I know we haven't really touched anything, but I was just trying to figure out the landscape where you belong to, and it's very vast. So it's been amazing. Time flew by. It was supposed to be 30
crap.
minutes. We went way over. So
Yeah, wow.
I'll have you back, but thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, this is great. Appreciate it.